Hello, everybody, and welcome to everybody from Shirley and Solihull Photographic Societies. As everybody knows, we are good, close neighbours, we're good friends, we've even got some joint members, we share workshops, so this is a great time for us to be sharing this event this morning. For those that don't know me, I'm Bob Breach, the current president of Solihull, and we also have with me Phil Morehouse, who's the president of Shirley. And indeed, I must just say this morning, I think it's Phil's daughter's 21st birthdays, and he can't socially be next to them. So we hope that they have a great birthday and no doubt have a bit of fun over the internet like we're having this morning. It was Phil that actually suggested this inter-club meeting. It's a bit of a fun to brighten things in these rather gloomy days. And it's a lockdown. It's a lockdown photo challenge between the two clubs. We were delighted to accept the challenge, and I know Phil is going to be joining us throughout this session, and he's going to say a few words at the end to thank everybody for participating. Right, before we start, I just want to introduce the team that's involved in presenting this morning. We've got Jim Hiscox from Solihull, who's going to be our recordist. He's going to produce a recording which we'll make available to both societies as soon as we can. We've got John Innes, who is sitting in his house. He's going to be running the software and making sure that everything runs technically smooth. And of course, we've got Anne Sutcliffe. Anne is our judge. She's well known to both Solihull and Shirley members, close friend to everybody, a great judge, and we know we're going to enjoy her comments on the images today. I think there's a couple of other people just observing, but they're the main participants and active involvement in this meeting. So what I want to do now is just very quickly run through how we're going to operate this competition. And then I'm going to hand over to Anne, who's going to take over the running from there on in. We have chosen 25 images from each club. We've tried as hard as possible to make sure that at least one member gets one image included. So it's a very broad selection of entries. We are going to run the whole set of 50 images through initially, just so you can see what they're like. Then Anne will start judging commentary on each image. If there are a couple, or however many, if there are some images which she thinks are particularly good and worthy of either 19 or 20, that's the highest score, then they'll be held back and judged separately at the end. Normally the score is from up to 20 points. So that anything up to 18 points, they'll be allocated as we go along. The 19s and 20s will be held back and judged at the end. I think probably that's all I want to say at this stage. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Anne. Anne is well known to everybody. She's poised, waiting in her room. So Anne, welcome, and thank you so much for doing this judging.
Thank you, Bob. Well, hello everybody. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. At least the sun's out today and the wind stopped, which is more cheerful. I've taken this competition as something that's really meant to entertain you and just give you a bit of fun during what has become quite a boring time for a lot of people. So I'm going to be, as always, as honest as I can be with my comments, but you will find that there are, I've been, some of you might think, more than generous with some of my marks, although those who don't get quite such high marks might think I should have been more generous. But anyway, it's, as I say, I'm not taking this lightly, but I am trying to make a lot of you very happy with some high scores. So with that being said, I'll hand over to John and we'll do the run through. Right. I don't know whether you can see me. All I can see is Joe, but never mind. If you can see me, you will actually see that I'm looking down, because the images that I received to look at, I've prejudged, but they were in a different order. So I've got a different order. So I have to check each time just to make sure what the score was and to knock the image out. So this is a nice one to start with. I think it could have done possibly with just a little key line around it so that it doesn't disappear into the screen. But I thought this was a most unusual image. It really has impact. It hits you between the eyes. I like the lighting on the hair, and I like the sort of the blackness, almost the silhouette sort of representation of the eye, the eyelid, the eyelashes, and the eyebrow, and then the flowers as kind of wallpaper, I suppose. I don't really know how to describe the technique. And as I say, when I first saw it and went through the images, it had real impact. However, looking at it more closely, whereas I like what's happened to her hair towards the back of her face, and even that long curl that goes down onto her shoulder at the front. What I'm less keen on is just under her chin. It seems that the flower has got mixed in with the hair, and it looks to me a little bit messy. I don't know whether you can see what I'm talking about. It's just a bit chunky. So eventually I gave Holly 18. Um, I did. I enjoy this sort of image. I like the kind of oldie worldy feel. I'm sure it's a modern image, but it's been given a sort of a sepia tone, which works very well, because these are kind of country folk, probably in well, somewhere in the Mediterranean, I'd say. I'd be guessing Italy, and I'd probably get it wrong. But I do love that the mother, the gorgeous little girl with the lighting's being captured really nicely on her white top, and we haven't got any too harsh shadows, and then we've got grandma and possibly even grandpa to the top right. So there's a real story going on there, and that part of the image I absolutely love. What I was less keen on was the woman with the rucksack walking into or out of the picture to the left hand side of the image. And I think if it had been my image, I would have probably either waited for her to disappear, but perhaps there were too many people coming and it just wasn't possible, or I might actually have cropped this image more. For prints, you tend to get a standard size, but I think for DPIs, you can have virtually any size of image you want. So I would have lost that woman on the left-hand side. So Family Time has got 16. Yes, this, I have to say, if I'm totally honest, this image confused me. And the reason was that I love the clown and his outfit, and I like the reflection in the crystal ball, which is again of the clown, and it's really sharp, that bit of reflection. But then I began to get confused, because I couldn't actually work out why the crystal ball was out of focus. I can sort of understand that the stand is out of focus because the ball's out of focus, but why the ball had to be out of focus. And then how come just the tips of the shoes, the clown's shoes, they're a little bit soft as well. And what really got to me, and it may be some sort of artifact of the photography, or it could just be my screen, but on the the bottom, the hem of the clown's left leg, there's a kind of white blob, which once I'd seen it, I kept looking at it. So love the concept, love the clown, except for his white blob. Really think I wish the crystal had been in focus. So I've given that one 14. This is a super monochrome image. It's really nicely presented post-process. We've got the full tonal range. We've got good seeing in terms of what you've chosen to show and what you've chosen to exclude, and some nice concentric shapes and repeating patterns. So I kind of see this as an architectural type of shot, and it's as I say, it's been done really very nicely. It does just go a little bit light at the top of the screen on the left, but overall I thought it was a good image. Apart from that little bit of lightness, I can't actually find anything wrong with it. But on the other hand, as I said, at least during Solihull's annual exhibition, some images call to you and give you a really strong emotional response. This one doesn't call to me in terms of storytelling or strong love-hate response, but I do regard it as a very good image. So I've given it 18 points. Yes, where is she? The photographer here was either exceptionally lucky or exceptionally skilled, because these walruses were almost certainly hauled out on some rocks. So the photographer was in some sort of boat, and the difficulty is that if you're in a boat, you're moving, which means that you move with the boat rather than having huge opportunities to reposition yourself and get a good composition. But as I say, you were either very lucky or you're very competent, because the mother and the baby are absolutely fantastic. The shine in the mother's eye, the loving posture with her nose on her baby's head, all that works extremely well. And then, although there are other walrus in the picture, that the two heads behind quite nicely fill the rest of the screen without detracting from the mum. And then there's another one that I can't quite work out what the position is, but he would appear to be lying on his back, and to have lost one tusk, but you can see that the sort of his moustache really quite nicely. So it's beautifully sharp. I love the way it's been composed. I think the lighting's hugely sympathetic to the creatures, and that you've done a really good job here. So this one is going to be held back. Yep, this butterfly is beautiful. It's been well photographed, but I do think that it's just a little bit small in the composition, and it would possibly have been better if you cropped your image just to make the butterfly larger. And if you cropped it mainly from the bottom, but also down the left-hand side, what you'd managed to achieve would you have been that you would have lost that very bright stem coming in from the middle of the left side of the picture. So that would have helped really quite a lot. It would still have been there a little bit, but it wouldn't have been so prominent, because that takes your eye away from the butterfly and makes you look left, whereas the butterfly is suggesting to us that we should be looking to the right. I think you could have done with just a little bit more depth of field, because that forward coming leaf on where the twig branches round and upwards with those flowers on, there's one leaf there that's really quite out of focus, and it is distracting. But I have to say that you've done a really good job on the butterfly, because you've got the wings sharp, you've got the antennae sharp. It's just that it's a bit small, and it could have done, I'm sure, with being enlarged, and you wouldn't have lost any of that quality. So I gave that one 13. Yeah, this one, it's interesting, and you've got great differential focus, so you're picking out your main two poppies with light coming through them, and you've also got lovely lighting on the buds on the right hand side, or the stems of the buds, with the fur on them. But there are one or two things that didn't really help this picture. One is that to the right of the lowest of the buds, the two on the bottom right, there's something white and horribly nasty to the right of them, and it's a distraction which could have been cloned out. The other thing is that in terms of your depth of field, while you've got the poppies nice and sharp and their buds, we've got some out of focus leaves in the foreground. And for me, that makes the picture quite messy, as does the fact that the left-hand poppy has somehow got a shadow. I presume it's from another poppy behind it, or wherever. And the same with the other one, it's got quite a strong shadow on it. So I like the concept of what you've done, but I think you need to have another go at it if you can ever get to another lovely poppy field like this, and see if you can manage to isolate your subject a bit better. You know, even if you do what nature photographers do, which is a bit of gardening, so you get rid of some of the greenery in the foreground. So I gave that one 13. Whoops. Is this one called Shoot? Did anyone see? I missed it.
Yes, it is Shoot.
Thank you. I thought it was. Thought I remembered. This is a great shot of an ice hockey player, and we've got a real sense of movement with the ice being thrown up around his skates, and a sense of power. He's just made the stroke, and the puck's being captured in the image, all of which is really, really good. So that aspect of the image is absolutely super. What's slightly less appealing in this image is that we've got an out of focus player right behind the foreground figure's helmet or head, and it's just a shame, because it would have been much nicer if that figure could have been a little bit to the left of the screen, shall we say, because it just would have made a slightly stronger composition. So the front of the picture is great. I'm not quite so keen on that player, and I'm also not quite so keen on having all those people in the background. I think maybe I would have just toned them down a bit. I know that's not how it was, but you've got some quite bright areas at the top of the image, and then you've got that pillar to the top right. None of that could you have avoided, but you could possibly have just toned it down a bit. And so I do like the image, but I've given it an 18. Daffodils. This is very different from all the other images that have been entered into this competition. The arrangement of the flowers themselves I thought was very, very appealing, particularly the way you've organised the leaves. So we've got those sort of delicate curves, and they're effectively filling the bottom of the picture, and the flowers are sort of nicely positioned on the top horizontal third. That I think the background suits the image. It's a bit reminiscent. It's not quite like old botanical illustrations, but it's getting halfway there. It is much more of a sort of a drawing effect rather than just a straight picture of daffodils on an interesting background. But, and this is, I think, purely a matter of personal taste, I just found that the outline, the black outlines round the petals, particularly of the two bigger daffodils, was it just felt a bit heavy for such delicate flowers. And while I can appreciate that you wanted an outline because that's the effect that you were going for my personal taste, I think you've been just a bit heavy-handed with the thickness of it, particularly on the trumpets, right at the top of both of them. So I've given you 16 for that one. Found it. Yeah, the annual migration of these wildebeest. This, I can't remember who told me, and I'm not actually sure whether the information is correct, but I seem to recall that the herd as a group sort of all bunch up together, and then they shove a test beast off the riverbank in the hope that that will distract any crocodiles present. So what they're really doing is sacrificing one of their own, and then once the crocodiles are distracted, then all the other animals leap over and swim across the river. So this is a great action shot, and it's capturing a moment of animal behaviour, which is really good as well. If I'm right, well, it's behaviour anyway, isn't it? A bit going on the normal migration, but even more so if I'm right about this being the sacrificial animal. So I like what you've got. You don't really have a huge amount of choice about what to include, but I think you've done really quite well in that you've got the featured animal, then you've got the all the ones that have pushed him off, and then we've just got the legs and a couple of heads of the ones all massing up behind. So compositionally it works quite well for me, so I've given it 18. Sarah, where are you, Sarah? Yes, I do like this image. I think it's very gentle. The girl is very beautiful. She's got beautiful hair. She's got beautiful skin, and she very much suits a high key image. The way the picture's been presented, with a little bit of vignetting, I find quite attractive. The only, and it is a minor criticism, but the only criticism I would have of this girl is that her fringe over her left eye, there's just one or two stray hairs, which maybe you didn't see when you were taking the picture, but I do think it would have been nice if they could have been cloned out. But otherwise, I find this a really beautiful portrait, so I'm going to hold it back. Yes. Where are you? Sorry about this. I keep having to look for them because I've got them in alphabetical order. I think I'm probably very ignorant, but I don't know how to pronounce the title, and I don't quite know what it means. I get the comfort bit, and I love the warm light that's being thrown by the candles. I think that works very well, and the fact that they're all the same colour and they're on a lovely wooden table, that works well, and the fact that you've got differential focus, so there's some sort of jug or pot or something behind, that fits okay for me. And I like the way that you've actually chosen the colour of the wax for your key light. So all that shows that you put some thought into the picture, and I congratulate you for that. But what I can't quite handle, and if maybe I understood the title, I would be able to, but I really can't work out what's going on in the bottom right-hand corner. It just doesn't make any sense to me. There's something that's caught that a really bright light and is bright yellow, and I just don't know what it is. So I find that bottom right-hand corner very distracting. Now, whether that was intentional because of the title or not, I don't think it works terribly well for the picture. And also there's that round white circle also in the bottom right, which is really quite distracting as well. So I've given this one 13. Yes, this image again, you know, it's the little touches that sometimes help, but I love the way the colours of the cottons that have been chosen for this image. I don't no longer sew myself, but I do remember my mother using Silco cottons, and I like the way that the photographer has chosen the yellow colour of the cotton to make the key line. But what's more, that although this is just 2 reels of cotton sitting on top of a Singer sewing machine, I'm not sure how many men would recognise it, but certainly some of the girls will remember their mother's old Singer sewing machines. I certainly remember that logo on my mother's. So we've got a great reflection. We've got the sense of the sewing, and we've got the cottons to go with it. And it's simple colour, square suits the image, and I really, really like this one, so I'm going to keep it back. Arching the trees, you've got some good lighting on the stonework, which certainly brings out the relief of the stones, but you don't have any really heavy shadows, which is good. But for my taste, I think the art in the trees is really the story that you wanted me to look at. But I've got a lot of background to the top left, which to my mind doesn't add a great deal to the image. And equally, there's the rocks on which the arch is situated, but whether they're really adding to the story, I'm not sure. And I think probably what I would have done is cropped off most of the left-hand side with a little bit of the tree that is by the arch, and then maybe cropped off a bit on the right-hand side, not very much, just a little, to get in closer and maybe lose a little bit of that bright grass down at the bottom right. And then I might also taken a bit off the top, so that we've got less of the light blue sky, particularly at the top right. So what I think the photographer's done here is they've shown us the arch and its environment, and I think they might well have done better if they just showed us less and concentrated our minds much more on the arch rather than what's going on around the edges of the picture. So I gave that one 13. Yes, I love this picture. I've seen similar before, but it's the lighting, which I assume is early morning lighting, on the snow-covered trees on the top of it. And I love some of the yellows and the dark blacks and greys and creams, and the fact that there's low cloud, just sort of simplifying the image behind. So the lighting's great, the col itself is great. What I wasn't so impressed with was what you've chosen to include. I guess you've done it because you wanted those 3 little pine trees down on the left-hand side at the bottom. But if you wanted to keep them, then I do think that you'd have done well to just tone down that very bright bit of yellow rock at the bottom right-hand side. So the image itself, your situation, your lighting, is all great. It's just that little bit at the bottom corner. So I gave you 18 for that one. Yes, I don't know whose image this is, but when you're watching, I have to say that you challenged me greatly. The title didn't really help me, but I imagine what I'm looking at is salt crystals, but I don't really know that either. And it doesn't matter. I've got no sense of scale. But the bit of the image that I absolutely adore is probably, if you look from the top left down to that jagged row of crystals, which look just like teeth, that part of the image I absolutely love. Separately, I'm quite attached to the bottom left of the picture, again, with the sort of jagged teeth, and then presumably salt crystals having dried out into sort of like little ridges. What I'm less keen on is that thing, and you can tell how much you're challenging me because I have no idea what to call it. But it looks like a kite, but it's much darker and heavier than the rest of the image's contents. And so to me, it unbalances the image somewhat. But I do like that little halo, again, of salty teeth just arching over the top of it. And I like the way in the top right-hand corner, we just get a sort of a hint of coming down a ridge or whatever we're doing. So this picture has some hugely appealing bits to it. And one particular bit that I really can't get my head around. And The other problem that I have is that there seems to be, going from, say, a third of the way down on the left-hand side, almost, well, all the way down to the thing, there's a very straight line. It's almost as if someone's drawn an ink line, or there's a wire, or I don't know what I'm looking at. So I don't know whether this is a sort of picture that's been created at home, or whether you took it when you were on travels, but I do think you could make something out of the left-hand half of the image if you presented it as a portrait and if you cloned out that line. But as it stands, as I say, the challenge was just a bit too much for me, so I gave it 15. Yes, this picture for me is classic Tuscany, and really, excuse me, unless you go in November or the winter months and you get the winter mists over the rolling hills, then for me this is the best time of year to go, when they're ploughing the fields, because you get these amazing stripes and shapes, and it just seems to be that the freshly turned over earth is different colour from the less disturbed earth, so you get some super patterns. And to have the tractor throwing up dust or exhaust as well and blowing across the picture just adds to it for me. The lighting wasn't that strong, but that doesn't bother me. And I love just the very soft shades of blue and green in the background, and all the cypress trees, which suggests to me that this is Tuscany. Of course, I could be talking over the top of my head, but I love this image. I think I like the pastel shades, I like the gentle lighting, and I'm going to keep it back. Yes, this one, it's sometimes it's difficult, because when you get an iconic building like this one, it's really difficult to do something different from everybody else. And so I quite like the title you gave it, which indicated, you know, that there she was on her phone wondering where the hell he was. She's quite nicely positioned in the frame. I'm not sure I would have kept the right hand railing that's in a sort of triangle shape. I'm not sure, it just, I don't know. Yeah, it's okay, because she wanted to get the shape of the blue and the yellow as well. But one thing I would definitely have done is I would have cloned out bottom left the, I think it's a light fixture, but it's a white blob, and I just kept looking at it. So I gave you 16 for that one. Yeah, this image I spent a lot of time looking at, because you've got beautiful slow shutter speed, which has had a good effect on the clouds, and a good effect on sort of flattening and smoothing the water. And I kept looking at it, and I kept thinking, I love these thingies. What were they called? Can't remember. So I kept looking and I kept looking, and something made me feel uncomfortable. And eventually I realised what it was, and that's that you've got a central horizon. Now, I think the image would have lost out if you hadn't got that big... can anybody help me out here? What are these things called? Nobody gonna help? Yes, so as I say, I was bothered. I think you need all of them in the picture, but I think you need to rebalance the picture. So what I would have suggested is that you take off most of the bottom, so that you've just got a little suggestion of shadow and water around the base of the left hand thingy. So I gave you 16 for that one. Winter walk, you've got some beautiful lighting, which works very well for me. I love the sense of autumnal mist, the leaves on the ground still not yet rotting away, so quite nice golden colours. And I think it was important that you had a figure somewhere in the picture roughly where you've positioned the main figure. But the fact of the matter is that you've also got another figure to the right and what looks like a little dog as well. But we're not getting to see the whole figure. So maybe you just came across this and it was a grab shot. But if it wasn't, and if you were actually waiting for people to walk, or you were with these people, I think you would have done a little bit better if you'd photographed them just a bit sooner before they started disappearing down the slope, which it looks to me as if that's what they're doing, so that we got at least the full central figure and the full dog as well. So I gave that one 16. Swan Lake. This was another image that challenged me because I couldn't work out whether I was looking at something that was real or not, because the swan has got beautiful light on it, and it's got a lovely reflection in what looks to be like very still water, and the reflection's really quite clear cut. But then we get the snow-covered trees in the background reflected in the water, making a beautiful circle around the swan. And I get the feeling that there's been some fiddling and diddling going on, because these reflections are not clear cut and solid, but they're quite feathered. And I actually really like the effect of that. That worked really well for me. So I find this a sort of dreamlike picture, and although I can't work out what I'm looking at, I think the trees, the swan, the light on the trees, it just works well as a pastoral or even a park scene. So I'm going to hold that one back. Coyote hunting in snow. This is a super picture of a coyote. He's nicely positioned in the frame. He's beautifully sharp. We can see his eyes, we can see his nose, we can see every detail of the snow, of his fur. But we also have him standing amongst presumably shrubs that are being covered by snow or possibly rocks. But it gives him a sort of a situation, and he's beautifully alert. He's probably hunting, but he's just a beautiful animal and very well captured. And I said, you know, that you should have emotion. If you do, then your picture is going to do well. Well, this picture evokes an emotion in me, which I'm ashamed to admit, but it's actually jealousy. So I'll hold this one back. budding naturist. She's such a sweet child, and I can't tell. I was hoping to see this picture large on my main computer screen, but it was making chuntering noises, and I was hoping they were going to go away, and I didn't want it to break down before today. And as it is, it hasn't broken down, but it's still chuntering. So I'm only able to see this picture on my laptop screen. But the one thing that I found a problem with was that there seemed to be a funny effect going on with the little girl's hair where it had caught the light, particularly around that little ponytail thing she's got holding her fringe back. But I love the kid. I love her baggy trousers. I love the fact that the green goes with the grass. I love the bluebells, and just her concentration, and the fact that, you know, of the title, that works well as well. But I think really the light is actually behind her, and I think the picture would have worked so much better if the light was on her face. So I've given it 13. Yeah, this certainly evokes a harsh winter, and the ponies out on the hillside, and the just the way the snow picks up on the ridges of the mountainside. And then at the very top, the fact that we've got a blue sky might suggest that it was reasonably warm and the snow was going to melt, but there's clearly high winds as well, because you can see the snow blowing off the ridge. So this picture is really evocative of a difficult winter. Horses in an expansive landscape with very little vegetation showing through for them to eat. I didn't keep this one back, mostly because of the position of the horses, because we've got, I think, 3 bumps here, and really it would have been nice to have them slightly better positioned. And I know you're telling me you can't tell horses what to do, and maybe if it really was as cold as I think it was, perhaps you didn't want to hang around and wait for them to position themselves better of their own accord. But I do like the picture. I think you've captured the mood, and I gave it 16. Yeah. Sometimes you can't help but know whose picture one is, and I'm pretty sure I know whose picture this is, and also because I've seen similar before, I'm pretty sure that I have I understand what's been done. So this is not a real background that the Ferrari has been put into, but I do think it actually works quite well, because it simplifies the background. We don't get any distracting marshals, we don't get distracting hay bales, or even white lines in the road. And we do get a sense that maybe the road's a bit wet, because we've got reflections in the foreground, also I believe artificially created, and that gives a sort of a more interest. It makes it a more painterly image rather than just your straight racing car images. And then finally, we've either got whether they're meant to be sparks or whether it's meant to be the wheels throwing up rainwater, but that adds a little bit to the image as well. So I like it as it is, but I just feel just perhaps that it's a bit sort of straight. I know it's letterbox, but there isn't much in the way of diagonals to give it strength, and the car hasn't really got a lot of space to drive out of. So I'm actually going to give it, if I can find, somebody remind me of the title, please. Title?
Ferrari at speed.
Oh, thank you. 17. This one, I've seen similar pictures around clubs, and I assume this must be some sort of gathering for young people. I with this particular image, I love the girl's face, I love her cheeky smile, I love her pose, but I just get the feeling that she's posing for another photographer, not for you, because she's not looking towards you. She's looking, it appears to me, to someone standing beside you. And also the guy in the picture is kind of clutching his hands, and he's looking a bit shy, as if he didn't really want his picture to be taken. But he has got a lovely smile and a great hairdo, if you've got the patience to have it done for that long. So, as I say, I just have this feeling that you were in a place where there are lots of young people who like to have their photograph taken, but you were perhaps amongst a lot of other photographers, because you maybe couldn't take a step back, but you've managed to sort of chop off the guy's right elbow, and whereas you've got space for the girl on the right hand side of the picture. So I don't feel comfortable with it, compositionally speaking, and also I think for my taste we've got rather a lot of colour, and I do actually wonder whether this picture would work better in monochrome, but as it is, I gave it 15. Sorry for the pauses, just finding out the image. This one, I don't usually like it when almost all the colour has been taken out of parts of the image and only colour left in certain parts of the image. But in this particular case, I actually think it works really quite nicely. I love the row of New York taxis. They're fantastic, and the fact that they're all lined up and they fill the whole front of the road, and that there are 5 of them, an uneven number, which works well, that all adds to the composition as far as I'm concerned and the success of the image. And equally, the photographer has actually waited for a figure to cross. I have to say, it's not the most aesthetically dressed person, but it is a figure, and I think the image needed that. But the photographer has actually got the figure in exactly the right position in the image. So he's walking into it and he's got room to walk out of it. And I think this picture works, so I'm going to hold it back. This one, it was one of the first ones that I saw, and of course, you all know me, I love dogs. And so the sight of these 3 dogs all enjoying their beach walk, sniffing around with their reflections, that appealed. And then their owner striding out with them all around him, with his reflection as well. He's quite nicely positioned in the image. So all of that worked really well to me. But then I kind of started looking and thinking, well, His jacket is a bit dark. It's unfortunate that he's got a dark pom-pom hat on. So there's not a lot of detail in the top half of his body, or indeed the top of his legs. And we're looking at his back view, and we've also got 3 doggy bums to look at. So I thought the concept was great, but in the end, it was the fact that everybody had their backs to us, except perhaps, well, he's still got his bum to us, but the top dog, at least we can see his face. But I think I would have liked to have seen just the dogs slightly differently positioned, or even, I guess you couldn't have run in front of the owner, but just to see slightly fewer bums. Because if you count, there aren't 3 doggy bums. Well, there are, but there's 4 bums in total. So for 4 bums, you get 15 points. This image made me laugh. I just absolutely adore the expression of the foreground goose. And the fact that the 2 background geese are going out of focus, that works well. The kind of expression could well be, oh God, because they're all looking in different directions, you know, where should we be going? And looking at the image, I don't know whether you'll be able to see it, how large it's going to come out on your screens, but when I had this full screen, there's a good vignette at the top which worked well for me, but the vignetting at the bottom didn't work quite so well, because if you think of it, oh dear, convex and concave. If I get the word wrong, I think I'm talking about concave at the top, but it's kind of rounded and it comes up at the corners. Whereas what's going on at the bottom, I don't think is so much vignetting. What it is, I think, is the out of focus body of another goose. But it kind of just, it began to look a bit like a lump of something. And that's the conclusion I came to. And of course, once you start to see these things, then you worry. And because of the way this competition is judged, it's incredibly important that I'm fair to everybody. And so similar images of similar standard get similar marks. So what I was doing was going through the pictures again and again and again and again. So had I been judging this off the cuff and seen this just once, I might not have noticed that bit at the bottom. But because I saw the image lots of times, the more I saw it, the more it annoyed me. So you would have been in the held backs, but because of that bit down there, I ended up giving it 17. Yes, you've got a beautiful day for this, beautiful calm water. It's quite, as canal bridges go, it's quite attractively decorated, and I can understand why you wanted to keep its reflection. But I felt that you probably included a bit too much in the picture. If you'd have possibly made it a letterbox, or at least cut off a goodly proportion of the bottom above those, whatever they are, the white flowers anyway, I think it would have worked better for me. And you've been up to something to enhance the clouds in the sky, and I thought you'd been a little bit heavy-handed with that as well. So in pictures like this, I think you have to work hard. It is hard to emphasize the bridge and lose all the bits of the picture that don't really add anything to the story. So I gave you 13 for that one. Break time?
I make that 30.
We're back in the room. I'm afraid I'm suffering from some very harsh lighting in the conservatory, so I've taken action.
I love it.
I am Mary Poppins.
Hi, well, after a slight confusion, I think we're about halfway through, perhaps a little bit further, and we said we'd have a quick break, if only to let Phil recover from the harsh lighting and Anne from some wonderful judging. So we'll just have a short break now, and then we'll recommence with Anne in just a few minutes' time.